is Tuesdays with Vennie Deas Moore. And we're thrilled to have Vennie with us. Many of you already know her, but if you don't, you'll be pleased and thrilled to get to know her today as she shares something of her knowledge and her heart with us. Vennie is a genealogist, cultural historian, and fine and folk arts professional. And I'm going to emphasize from Georgetown, with over 30 years of experience. Born and raised in the South Carolina Lowcountry, through her writings, research, and documentary photography, she has become one of the foremost experts in Southern folk and fine arts and cultural history. Her several careers have taken her through work as a research specialist in immunology at the Medical University of South Carolina, cancer research at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and guest curator at the McKissick Museum at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. She doesn't mention in her bio, but I know this well, that she is also strongly committed to the nonprofit world and actively involved in many of the services here in Georgetown, having worked previously, I know, at Reuse It with Habitat for Humanity, and is also serving as Red Cross on the Red Cross Emergency Response Team. She didn't tell me that, I just know that about her. It was while she was at the McKissick Museum that she became involved as a folk life photographer and writer. She has published numerous articles and books, notably Home. The title of the book is Home, Portraits from the Carolina Coast, a really beautiful book of photography and text, and a little book that I love that I've had on my shelf, The Fishermen of the Lowcountry, that she did with Billy Baldwin from McClellanville. And this morning she shares with us the cultural history of the Green Book. If you came today for a movie, no movie. But you're here for what is the historical background, for what has become very well known, but an important, and as I said in the announcement that went out for the sad part of our history, what it's reflective of in terms of a culture of that period of time from 1936 to 1966. Please join me in welcoming Vennie Deas Moore.
It is fabulous to be here. I'm going to do a little bit more introduction of myself, really little, because my friends know how much I can talk about myself. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I came here about a year ago, almost a year ago, from Columbia to live. So when I came with my skills and my books and papers and everything, and I said, how can I fit here in Georgetown? And one of the things I came with, believe it or not, is the Green Book. I had been studying the Green Book for about 3+ years. And when I came, a good friend of mine gave it to me as a gift because he knew how much I was dedicated to the Green Book. So I said all that to say this: I have not seen the movie. This is not the movie. This is about the Green Book. So I want to put that out. And I know it was horrendous to walk through Georgetown when the movie was going. You know, I had people walking out like really hyper and everything. And I never forget, I'll just give you this one point. I was walking by a storefront one day, and someone saw the my flyer. And I think it was a tourist, and they were like, the Green Book. And I said, why are they hyperventilating? I haven't even written this lecture yet. You know, they don't even know what the Green Book is about. So anyway, saying all that, I'm going to get started. First of all, my analysis of the Green Book is a AAA book. It's a tourist guide. This is what a Green Book is. That simple. It's a AAA book. Okay? First, I want to let you know, thank the library for their assistance in this year since I've been here. Like I said, I have continued my work. A lot of my work is through the digital system, and actually, a lot of this work was done on their digital system, okay? Now, the original Green Book is now, I'll go down here. It's stored at the Schomburg Library in New York. That's where the collection is. It's no longer being produced. We are reproducing them as a copy or reproduction, but it's no longer being produced. The other thing I want to say, what I strongly suggest that you see the documentary. There is a documentary through the Smithsonian that is about 50 minutes long, and I had seen that, and it's excellent, okay? Now, this is the story of the Green Book. In 1930, a black postal carrier from Harlem named Victor Green, which the Green Book is named after, published a book that was part travel guide and part survival guide. It was called the Negro Motorist Green Book, and it helped African Americans navigate safe passage across America well into the 1960s. They explore some of the segregated nation's safe havens, numerous sundown towns, and witness stories of struggle and as well as opportunities and tribute. So that is the Green Book, okay? One thing I want to point out is that the Green Book was like the AAA book. It covered everywhere you go. It covered the hotels, it covered the resort areas, it covered, like even today, if you want to go to a special park, it tells you about it introduces you to the park, it gives you tourist home, trails, park, restaurants, garages, a service station. This is what any way you needed to go safely. African Americans go safely. They got the Green Book to help them through it, okay? It was actually sponsored by, the sponsor was Mr. Green and Esso. Esso was actually the funding agency for the Green Book company, for the Green Book, Esso. And also that Mr. Green, how did he know all these places? He was a postman. That's how he knew where to go, because he was part of the postal system. The other thing, when the distribution happened, it was distributed through the Esso gas station. It was picked up through the churches and through African American communities. Okay, so that's how it was distributed. This is a picture of the gentleman that was part of the sponsorship. Now, one thing I keep hearing, my goodness, have I heard this or have I heard this? It's a Southern thing. It's not. Green was in New York. The first place the Green Book covered was New York. And from New York, it went all over the country. It guided you throughout the country. So it was not a Southern thing. And a lot of people feel that you don't have no restriction when you're in the North or in the West. But you do, as African Americans. We're talking about African American travel. Okay? It tells you where to stay, tells you what gas to stop at, because some gas stations, you can't even stop at a gas station and get gas. You'll run out of gas. I brought this piece up because guess what? Georgetown actually had, it's listed in the 1938, they're listed as one, but basically what they advertised were tourist homes. And I'll just call out the names real quickly. You probably know them better than I do. Mrs. Anderson, 424 Broad Street. Mrs. Ackerson, 811 Duke Street. Ackerson. Yeah. I'm sorry, I got a northern accent. Excuse me. Really? Okay. And Baycoat? Baycoat. Okay, Baycoat. 118 Orange. And the T.W. Green on Merriman and A.A. Smith on Emmanuel. Yep. So their homes were available for the Green Book, so when people traveled, they knew where to stay in Georgetown. And I want to point out this real quickly. Atlantic Beach was one of those places in the Green Book to go. And I got a choir over here. And I need to tell you this, because she's my cousin. Anyway. And one, I guess you will say, why when I came to Georgetown I was interested in it. I thought I could recreate the Green Book Trail in tourism. That was my point in trying to study the Green Book, to recreate the trail. But guess what? Most of the Green Book locations are gone. they are destroyed. Even the ones, tell me if I'm wrong, but even the ones in Columbia doesn't exist, the homes don't exist anymore. Am I correct with that? They don't exist anymore, they're gone. So it's very hard. After integration, these places did not get the business. So when you integrate, you can go anywhere. And unfortunately, one of the bad things about integration, we lose our communities. The other thing is that this is Columbia. This is where I came from. And in all these areas, we have what we call Black Downtown. This is a picture of the Black Downtown in Columbia, South Carolina. And if anyone ever been to the Richland County Library, that's where the Black Downtown was. If you see it now, it's government buildings. It is a university. It is, you know, you don't even know it's there anymore. We were able to preserve several of the houses out of the Black Downtown. And this is where they would be. Let me just give you some focus. We have Main Street here. You know Main Street. So Main Street is being preserved and everything. The blacks could not shop there. And then on Assembly Street, you have mostly the Jewish stores. And then you cross Assembly, then you have the Black Downtown. That's perspective, okay? Now, one thing, in a lot of my work that I do, is that I do a lot of study of African Americans during slavery, during the antebellum period, poor blacks. But one thing we fail to realize, and a lot of my study's been this study is middle class blacks. We have the middle class black that had cars and property. So this is an example of this woman probably traveling to Mexico. So that is another area of my research that is extremely important because we don't know about it. Most people don't know about it. And I want to just take a minute here, just a second. When McKissick Museum hired me back in, let me see what year, God knows, I don't know. I don't really remember. Just one second. I gotta look at it. I can never remember dates and names. Okay, 1994, there was a national traveling exhibit that went national. It's called Jubilation. And the study that I did was how African Americans celebrated. And I'll read a portion of this in a minute. But the most important part, the essay that I wrote in this catalog was, I've got something to celebrate. And it talks about me growing up in the 1950s in the middle class community of Charleston. My grandmother was a teacher. My parents were middle class. I went to museums. A lot of people say, how did you get interested in museums? I've been going all my life to museums. Yeah. And so this book actually talks about, the essay I have in here, among other essays, talks about middle class celebration and activities, which a lot of people do not know about. Again, middle class. This person, DaCosta, is from Charleston. This is out of Avery collection. So we had fun. Now the thing about it, and I'll talk to you in a minute about in the book when I read my little piece, is that when I was young and I went to the beach, which I love the beach, we could not go to Myrtle Beach. My family had to either go to the park, the Park Beach, and I'll tell you in a minute, I can't even remember the name, and Atlantic Beach. We could not go to Myrtle Beach. So that's how, not that we didn't have fun, we just couldn't go everywhere. We were not permitted to go everywhere. We would be stopped by the policemen if we went everywhere. So this is what this green book is about. Another thing I want to talk about, we were talking about it being a Southern thing. No, it was a United States thing. And one of the greatest paths from across the country would be Route 66. It was very difficult for African Americans to travel that distance. One thing, they would have nowhere to use the restrooms, they wouldn't have nowhere to sleep, they had no way of getting gas. So the Green Book insists in places where they can stop along Route 66, and that's a popular route, so they can survive that trip. Okay. Okay, what's causing all this? Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow? Someone in here don't know what Jim Crow is? I don't want to really get into it now, but it really gave us a licking as African Americans. We had sundown towns. What is a sundown town?
No blacks after a certain time.
No blacks after a certain time. If you are working, you have to get home before sundown. Or you travel, you better not be on the street doing something after the sun goes down. Okay? So these are some emblems that we would be, as we travel, we would be seeing. Whites only. Don't let the sun set on you here. And the other, you can read it for yourself. This is another image of what we went through. Toilets, bathrooms, water fountains. I know one time I wrote a book, and I gave it to a book for children on Jim Crow, not Jim Crow, but Brown versus Board of Education, and I gave it to a small class of mine. And I literally gave them this little pamphlet so they could be quiet. So they went and they read it. It didn't take long to read it. So the one little girl came back and she said, "You mean you can go to the white restroom, the bathrooms?" She said bathrooms. I said, "No, we couldn't go into the white bathroom." She said, "How couldn't you?" And I said, "How do you feel going into the boys' restroom? When you go in the boys' restroom, these days and time it doesn't matter." I said, "That's how it felt to me, going into a boys' restroom." Okay? So you got the picture. That's another picture that I brought, reserved for colors. The other issue is public transportation. Here in Georgetown, the Greyhound bus station for the black was one place, and for the whites to go on was another place. The train stations, the trains were the same thing. You could not get on the train anytime, any place, or anywhere. More likely, if you were on a train, you can go in a diner. That more likely would be the case. And actually, you couldn't even go in the same side of the building. This building is actually in Columbia. We still have it, thank God. We're preserving it. So the front door is for whites to enter. That side door is for blacks to enter. Another thing I went through when I was a child was the state fair. We had the black state fair and we had the white state fair. Usually in Charleston, when I was growing up in Charleston, it was on the park. So after the white state fair is over, then we go to the state fair. Now it's the black state fair. So that was one integration, sense of segregation, sorry. And this is what I was trying to think of, Huntington Island Park. I could get on Huntington Island Park Beach. Now, I couldn't get on Myrtle Beach, but I could get on Atlantic Beach. I could go on the state park. But guess what the state park? You go down this road, you split to here, that goes to blacks. You split here, that goes to the white. And more than likely, I know for sure, that they weren't built the same. They didn't have the sheds and they didn't have the bathrooms. Because I can remember with my mother, I could never eating our groceries out of the trunk of the car, or our lunches out of the trunk of the car. We didn't have the pavilions. We didn't have any of that for the most part. So the state made segregated beaches, and that was done mainly during 1930. This is pictures of them. They don't look that poor. Oh boy. And then again, another picture of the segregated African American area on Huntington Island Beach. This is a family at Atlantic Beach. I talked about, so Atlantic Beach is very interesting, is that it was owned by wealthy, middle-class blacks in other places. So during the summer, same story, they have resort areas. And Atlantic Beach is one of those resort areas where the family would come and vacation. So that's Atlantic Beach. And it was totally ran by African Americans. This is a picture of a hotel, motel on Atlantic Beach, Superfine Motel. And this is Atlantic Beach. One thing I want to talk about is, and this is a good example time to talk about this. We had African American entertainers that went all over the country. It was scary for them. I think that's what the movie is about.
Yeah.
Okay, I figured it. Anyway, the African American entertainers could not they were no better than anyone else. They couldn't go anywhere, they couldn't travel anywhere, it was dangerous. Even the top of music entertainers had trouble entertaining. They would, even after they got through, they would, like for instance, if they're entertaining at Myrtle Beach, when it ended, guess where they slept? On Atlantic Beach. They could not sleep on Myrtle Beach.
Right.
And so I always said we didn't get our entertainment until midnight. Because by the time they work on the White Beach, they come over to our beach by midnight and we go till 5. I remember the days when I could party till 5 a.m. I can't do that anymore. Give me 9. I'm gone. But anyway, that's what happened with these wonderful entertainers. Now, I have the shag hat. What is the state dance about? South Carolina State Dance. I studied this for years. I mean, I studied the shag music, the shag dance, everything for years. And I was old enough to become a member of the shag club.
You?
I can shag, yes, I'm the shag. I was a member of the shag club. So, let me give you a hint on this, or lesson on this. On the black beaches, we were swinging. We were swinging.
Yep.
On the white beach, we created the shag. Okay, not only did we created the shag, but guess who we're dancing to? Are we dancing to white musician in the earlier days? No, we're dancing to the black, the best of black music. And I was lucky enough, I haven't talked to Bubba Snow in a while, but he was a friend of mine. Bubba Snow, the representative Bubba Snow. Is he still alive and well? I haven't talked to him. Huh?
He's still alive. He's not good health, but he's still
Okay,
alive.
Bubba Snow, I haven't seen him in a minute. Bubba Snow, who's a state representative, right, took this dance to the State House, and the shag became the state dance. So a lot of people don't understand the history behind the shag. I hope I got some time with y'all to ask, but I don't want to use up all the time. But I had one personal experience. You know, I told you I was at the shag club. We have SOS. I know you know what SOS is. I normally didn't go to SOS, but that year I decided to go to SOS. And I took my friend from Boston. I think she was from Boston, with blonde, blue eye. And I went to one of the places where the SOS was happening. So Jane, we get to the door, and Jane walks into this place. And Jane goes, thinking I'm behind her, the guy does this to me in my chest. You're not to go in. They don't even know who I was. I'm a shag club, but we won't go there. He hit me in my chest, and Jane walks in about half pace, and she looks back, and she sees I'm not with her. So I said, come back, come back, come back. So she came back out. She doesn't even know what the shag is. She's only white. I was only going to show her what the shag was. So we end up going on the beach and seeing what the shag is. So that's the history behind the shag and entertainers, black entertainers. This is actually a picture of my mom. So she loved having fun. Everybody know me, I love having fun. My mom said that. I adopted that from my mom. So this is a picture of my mother. Eugenia Day. She's actually 94 years old now, and she's she's from Cleveland. Okay, this is me. This is the end. Okay, this is the article out of Jubilation. It's called "I've Got Something to Celebrate: Memories of My Childhood in South Carolina." And I'm going to read this portion about going to the beach. Along the 150-mile route, we would pass many resort areas and beaches, but blacks could not go there unless they were maids or worked on the grounds. Huntington Beach was a state park set up especially for blacks. Once we saw other once there, we saw other bus excursions as well as people in private cars. There were no restroom facilities. People would spread blankets along the white sand to shade themselves from the sun. Some families open up large umbrellas, and the older ladies in skirted bathing suits would wear large sun hats. Families used their open car trunks as picnic tables as they served their children fried chicken, red rice, green beans, and potato salad. 4th of July and Labor Day was spent at Atlantic Beach, which was black-owned. Back in 1933, R.W. Ward sold Atlantic Beach to George Tyson, a black developer. Since in those early days, there were pavilions, amusement areas, and other things were added. Big names there was the Drifters, Chubby Checker, Mary Wells performed at Atlantic Beach. The shows usually start about midnight after the entertainers finished performing at the White Beach, Myrtle Beach. The pavilions would be packed with people from North Carolina and South Carolina. After they knocked off, the maids and other workers of Myrtle Beach would join the crowd and dance until 5 or 6 in the morning. It's good. So you tell, it's not the movie. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah. You left out Mackenzie Beach, Frank Mackenzie Beach was.
Yeah, there are a lot, oh, you say I left the Mackenzie Beach. Yes, I did, but there were a lot of beaches, and I have a paper here that lists at least 7, 8, 10 beaches.
But this was a major beach in our area for blacks.
Yeah.
It's called Magnolia Beach now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. But there's a list that I have not, I haven't even started to touch where places where African Americans could go. Matter of fact, I was reading some of the research that when Obama was president, he went to one of the original African American resort areas, and I think that was in Boston, what you call it, not Boston, but up in the New England area.
Cape Cod?
No.
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha
Oh,
Dillion.
Vineyard,
Yeah, Martha Dillion, and there was an African American area there too, and he went to visit it. Okay, are there any questions?
Do you know the history about Magnolia Beach?
I am not, that's one thing I have not researched. I'm Atlantic Beach, I went to Atlantic Beach.
Okay.
But saying that, there's a big preservation project that's going on. It's one of the few hollow structure that still exists. Atlantic Beach still exists. We've tried to do, I think there have been books written on Atlantic Beach. So, but for the most part, most of the places are gone. I mean, it came in and like I said, in Columbia, all those places on Taylor, I'm saying Taylor Street, it's not Taylor Street, but all this, where the black downtown was, is all gone. We have one building left, we have given credit to Jessica Simpkins, because that's another thing, women were own businesses. Jessica Simpkins was one of those women. A lot of women own businesses. So most of it is gone. Any other question? Did I ask you a question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Was the Green Book produced on a yearly basis?
Yes.
Or a month? So every year it would come out? And
yes.
Wasn't it expensive to buy?
It was about 50 cents. This is it. And they said at certain times they sold thousands of Green Books. So basically, this is the Green Book, and this is for the AAA.
Who paid for that? Was there advertising in the book?
The Esso, the community, the churches. They were advertisement, and there's a book over there that you can see some of the advertisement. They were advertised.
Are there churches listed in there too?
Normally, church is not listed because, I will say like this, is because we're talking about entertainment. We're trying to go someplace on vacation. Not saying they weren't, but that wasn't the purpose. Let's think of the AAA book. That's how it was getting. Yes,
How did you get listed in the Green Book? Were there people out gathering information, or would you call? How would you get in?
Well, Green left the Postal Service and totally dedicated himself, so he had a company to produce, he was the publisher. Mr. Green was the publisher, so he had advertisement and he had a company who actually produced the Green Book.
What about Folly Beach, were you, and relative to blacks?
Well, we have a long list, and if I stand here, I'll be another 2 hours.
Yeah, but I'm
Was Folly Beach a black beach?
Mosquito Beach. Mosquito Beach. Not, I see what you're saying. I don't know that Folly Beach was. Mosquito Beach was. Mosquito Beach is around Folly Beach, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, now let's,
I want to comment on the importance of this, Vennie, because what it does is illuminate what our lives really were like, and they are highly textured. It wasn't all in the fields all the time. There were sets of people, even through segregation, who insisted that their children be exposed, that they travel places, even if it was the beach. But I like this, I think it's important because we often make the mistake of portraying ourselves as either one thing or the other, and there seems to be nothing in between. This is the vital, critical in between. These are how lives were really lived, you know, what people sought to do. And the fact that I am originally from the North, landed in the South, and walked around all day long and never saw white people coming from one place to the other. But we were in a cosseted community with a black barber, black dentist, black doctor, black lawyer. And so my take might be somewhat unique because I saw so many positives of people living so closely connected in the South. And I like anything that highlights that. It's very, very important in portraying us as a multi-textured, multi-dimensional people.
right. And
You don't hear about the middle class African Americans. With you, even now.
It
How
confuses the
you-
picture of us.
Now, are you from the North? Where?
Connecticut.
Oh, okay, we lived in Connecticut too. So you had a different view that, I mean, all we hear about are, you know,
But
the
it's
slaves
Let
and.
me put a pin there. Let me put a pin there. I was born in McCloudville. I grew up in Charleston. My grandmother was a teacher. I was across the street from Dark Street of museum, not museum, library. I know when I went, I see what you're saying, but I didn't see that way. I found myself to have what I needed, what I had the needs. I mean, I had the wealth. My uncle, who died maybe, about 5 years ago in his 90s, he had his master's. He's from South Carolina. Of course, he had to go north to get it. He couldn't go to South Carolina, University of South Carolina. He could have gone to South Carolina State, which didn't have a master's degree, so he had to go north to get his master's. So I think I hear what you're saying, but if you've been in my world, you would not see that. I remember when I moved from here to Charleston to go to Johnson C. Smith University, people, even today, people say, you know, they see me walking down Front Street, who are you? Why do you act like you do? I've acted like this all my life. I'm not your stereotypical whatever. So, but you know, that's what I'm saying. You don't see that, you know, these are my friends over here. I mean, you would not believe their background. These are my friends. You would not believe their background. This is a doctor. This is a PhD. So, it's hard to explain it. I think people are looking from the outside in. I'm looking from the inside out. Yes, I don't want to, you know.
As a northerner, we grew up thinking we were the good guys in terms of racism, and we weren't. I mean, the North tends to think it was a Southern issue, but the town I grew up in was a completely white town. There were no blacks. My grandfather was a huge racist, and you know, it's not. We don't have anything to brag about. as Northerners. We were no different in our attitudes. And I like that you bring that out, that this was a problem for the whole country. It wasn't something that the North could pat themselves on the back and say, we're not doing that, because we were. I mean, my town was an all-white town. There were no blacks.
Jenny, you know my background. I came from a plantation, ended up at Harvard.
Right, yes, right, you're highly educated, I know.
But my formative years was a private school on Acadian Plantation.
Okay, Vanessa.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York. My parents were from Georgetown. I grew up in New York, and you know, when you're a kid growing up in New York feels very integrated.
Yes, the big city would be
Right.
different.
But and it was when I would come south. In fact, my first, I think, direct experience with segregation was here in Georgetown. We came down one summer, and we were told not to go to the Strand Theater. But being children, you know, there were like, my cousins and I, there were like 5 or 6 of us, went to the Strand and we sat upstairs. And that was the first concrete experience I had with segregation. And I remember my cousins throwing stuff down.
But yes, I did too.
But then as an adult, just a few years ago, I lived on Long Island for a number of years. And was really kind of surprised to find that still in many of the communities on Long Island still have these covenants that are sundown covenants on Long Island. Today. And so
Sort of unspoken, like an unspoken thing, but you know
well,
that's how it is.
well, the ordinances have never been changed. You know, unbeknownst to many of us, those covenants still exist. Those sundown covenants are still in place. They're not largely enforced, but they are still in place in these subdivisions on Long Island. And I guess my final comment is, looking back now, and you know, it's amazing how my parents shielded us from racism.
Right.
And made, because we did a lot of traveling, generally by car, but they shielded us, you know, I mean, so packing a bag lunch with chicken and oil, anything you want to eat was just a game and fun. You know, I mean, so we didn't even have to deal with the indignity of being refused service in a restaurant. So this is, I want to thank you, Vennie, for doing this, because it's important for all of us to kind of.
And I want to add to that. Let's talk about the chicken bone express. What we did is we cooked, our parents cooked all morning the chicken bone and packaged it. And even when we went on the bus, this Greyhound bus to go to the north, because we had migration was part of our culture, that we didn't have to stop because our parents had already packed us the chicken bone, fried chicken bone. The other thing I want to make mention of, I talk about Columbia, and Washington Street was a black downtown, by the way, I remember. But when in Charleston, I grew up, we could not go in Bell's. We went in the basement of Bell's. We could not eat in with the food thing. So even everybody talked about having the lunch counter. We couldn't even shop on that floor. We would go on the bottom floor, and that was more than likely, I guess that's why I'm in surplus so much now. We went and got the surplus stuff, the things that did not sell the year before. That's what we bought in the big stores downtown. And I remember Dale Rosenthal is a good friend of mine. She's done a lot of study on the Jewish population. I remember my mom, after Edwards, there is the Jewish population on King Street. That's where she got her furniture from. But she did not get her furniture from this side of Morris Street. Or we're not even going to Calhoun Street. I remember when I started doing my research, I felt so funny going on the other side of Calhoun Street. It was a line of demarcation.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments?
I want to say that I learned to shag when I was 15. And the people that lived in the renter house that worked with my family, they were black. And Meg was her name, and she taught me to shag when I was 15, long before it was choreographed, or I shagged under the boardwalk over here at Myrtle Beach. But I had trouble with the Charleston. They were very good, and I was so grateful that she could teach me to shag.
Well, you might have been swinging. So when I learned to shag, I had to forget my swing steps. So you probably were swinging. It's a little different. I'm good at shagging.
She was very good.
What was swing? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, statements? Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment. Just from a sociological point of view, think of the monies, the energy, the effort, which went into making sure there was this absolute separation. The cost, and think of all of those young people who were so talented in multiple ways, who had fine brains and would have made excellent engineers or physicians or researchers or clothing designers who were denied that opportunity. And that this is a mighty, mighty cost that this country has made and has not yet fully paid.
Yeah, well, let me go back to Vanessa, our parents. Remember, in my bio, I'm a biochemist. I was specialized in immunology at George Washington University. That had nothing much to do with segregation. That had to do with my family.
Amen.
And there was a lot of more people out there like me that are doctors and scientists. And saying that, I'll jump into this generation. I have two boys. And these two boys, things weren't that much better. God knows. I have a, let me draw back a second. My younger son looked like Ice-T.
Yeah.
I mean, he's big and dark. And how many times had that poor boy been picked up by a policeman? I had to tell him, I mean, he was picked up so many times. His car was stopped so many times. And what I would tell him, that my mother will be here, put me in jail. My mother will be, and he's about early 40s now. My mother will be here with her lawyer tomorrow. That's it. Go to jail, don't mind. You'll be out by tomorrow. Tell them your mom, because you can't see the attorney till the next day. They got the caging first at night. And I would tell them that, do not hold your hand up. Matter of fact, I would say this real quickly. He was so tired of being stopped in his sporty car that he ended up getting a pickup truck. A Ford pickup truck. What does he look like? And he puts a shade on it so he can travel without being stopped. He got a white guy's car truck so he could stop being stopped so much. Gave away his fancy car. Now, saying all that, guess what he does now? He was over 10 years in the military, the Navy in Japan. He's now he has a top position in Florida as in Homeland Security. I mean, and I don't know what he does. He has secret codes, secret position. He can't even tell me what he does. I said, Keith, are you still working? Yes, I'm still working. I can't tell you about what I'm doing. So this is where he is after being arrested so many times. My oldest son is at, his wife is a PhD at Duke University. She took after her mother-in-law. She's a scientist. She's from St. Kitts. And my son is an engineer. So I'm saying, I agree what you're saying, but we had so many parents that put us to that next level. Like, heck with those people. You just can't walk that street. You just got to put your hand down to your side so you won't get shot. Don't lift your hands.
Get shot.
But now, and God knows, when he went to Japan, I was so happy. He was in Japan, my younger son, he was in Japan for 10 years. And I was so, and when we put him on a plane to go to Japan, he said, Mom, you're not even crying. I said, boy, I'm so happy you're out of this country.
I can breathe.
I can breathe. He was in Japan for 10 years in the Navy. So that's what I heard. I don't know who said that about the money. Yeah, the money. We didn't care. We didn't care. We have to do what we have to do.
We do, excuse me.
Yes.
When I say the money, I'm not talking about our money. I'm talking about the money of the nation.
I know.
That was spent on something to keep somebody down.
I totally agree.
And that was a considerable amount of
I
money
agree.
that was
I agree.
spent to do that.
Yeah.
And also a considerable amount which was done psychologically to do that.
Yes.
However, there were those of us who persevered,
Yeah.
all right?
Yes.
And there are those of us who did do. All I'm talking about is the numbers
I agree.
who probably didn't do, who had everything it was necessary to do.
Oh, yeah, sure. My son had friends that didn't make it
Yes,
because they were convinced that they couldn't make it.
yes.
I know one was his best friend, Tariq, and you got to think about names too. I had to do Keith
Mm.
because you could not get a job if you have the name Tariq, but Keith can get a job. I'm smart, Mom. But anyway, we go back to Tariq. Tariq hadn't made it.
Yes.
And I never tell, him and Derek Pete was playing in high school and wasn't doing their work for their own little reasons. And the parents, the teachers weren't encouraging them, they didn't care less. So anyway, they didn't make it through school that semester, that year. And Keith had to go to summer school and Tariq had to go to summer school. And I went to Tariq's mother and I said, Keith is going to summer school. She said, well, I can't put Tariq in summer school. He already worked so hard. I said, how did he work so hard? He need to go to summer school. He's going to summer school. He went to summer school. So, it's a kind of twofold thing. And I do agree what you're saying, but again, it's not my problem. It's that world out there's problem. It's not my mother's problem. You saw that woman? She was a riveter. My mother was a riveter at the Navy Yard. You don't even know they're a black riveter. She was a riveter. Well, I guess I need to tell this. How much more time?
Go ahead.
I interviewed my mom one time on how she became a riveter. And she said she went to the Navy Yard in World War II. She went to the Navy Yard and, she walks in as an African American and she went to Burke Industrial School, learned welding. So she goes in and when the first time they see her, they think she's going to be a maid, clean up the shop. And he said, no, I came to weld. I'm a welder. I'm a welder. That's what and so he said, you're a welder. Well, weld this together. So she said, here. So she became a welder. That's her story. She's 94 years old now. She was a riveter. So I'm not saying, we are looking at the newspapers saying how horrible life is for African Americans, but we're not looking at the newspaper seeing the accomplishment of African Americans. And it's hard to convince people how successful we are, have been, has always been. The rice fields out there. Who do you think did those $1 million rice fields?
Bam, my folks.
Made millions. Boy, we're not even going there. So what we are doing, we are seeing a story that is written and a story that's being told, and now it's time for someone else to tell the story.
Amen.